Rice Conley, and this is Choices and Consequences. Today we are talking with Detective Donald LeDuc of the Londonderry Police Department and Philip LeBlanc, firefighter and EMT with the Fire Department in Londonderry. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Let's start with you, Detective. Could you give us a little background, history so we get to know you?
Well, I am a police officer with the Londonderry Police Department. I've been a police officer for 25 years. Last December, I am currently the juvenile officer and a detective. I've spent about 17 years in patrol, 3 years in training, and the last 7 years as the juvenile officer.
Wonderful, thank you.
I've
Phil.
been a firefighter EMT with the town for 7 years. I'm an EMT intermediate. I'm also a public relations coordinator for the fire department, and prior to working in the fire department, I was a reservist in the Marine Corps.
Great. Thank you both for being here. We are getting into prom and graduation season, and I thought it would be nice if we could just chat about underage driving, driving while intoxicated. If we could start with you, Detective, can you just explain the difference between DUI and DWI?
Sure. Quite simply, there isn't any real difference between DUI and DWI. They're just acronyms for statute titles. For example, DWI stands for driving while intoxicated, which is the title, or was the title, for the New Hampshire statute that covers driving under the influence of alcoholic beverages. DUI is another common acronym for driving under the influence that other states have had as a title for their statutes. But currently, the statute currently reads, and it's no longer DWI, it's driving or operating under the influence of drugs or liquor, driving or operating with excess alcohol concentration. So
Whoa.
There is no acronym for that. So DWI is what we use, and of course aggravated DWI is still on the books as a title.
Okay, we'll get to aggravated in a few minutes. How many arrests a year do you make in Londonderry for DUI?
Sure. Currently, in the year 2013, today is May 1st, we have 43 arrests on the books. But for underage and under the age of 21, we have four arrests for underage drinking and driving. And that's about a 9% so far in 2013.
Is that an average amount, higher or lower than normal?
Well, actually, the averages, or at least the percentage of underage drinking to all DWIs is actually been decreasing over the years, which is good news for us in
Yay.
Londonderry.
Yeah.
For example, in 2012, there were 118 arrests for DWI, and 3% of those were underage drinkers and drivers. 2011, there was an 8%. In 2010, there was a 10%. In 2009, there was 16% of all drunk driving arrests were underage drivers.
Great.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's going down?
Well, public awareness, I think that the trends are changing. I think there are more programs available, more treatment. I don't think you can put your finger on any one specific thing. I think it's a culmination of trends and culture.
Wonderful. As long as it keeps going.
Do you think that with the push to eliminate texting and driving, and that's such on the forefront that in the back of kids' minds and adults' minds comes up drinking and driving also? You know, it's mentioned a lot that texting and driving is worse than drinking and driving, or that the numbers are higher, so thus it's also promoting the not to drink and drive on top of it.
I think it brings the focus of teenage drivers to the forefront. I mean, with texting, we talk more about teens texting and driving than they do with adults who text and drive, which, you know, is also a very common thing nowadays. They said the #1 distraction for teens nowadays is texting while driving, which is why New Hampshire now has on their books a statute that prohibits texting while driving. but it does promote
It-
teenagers' driving habits.
Do you have many arrests or stops for texting?
We have several stops. I don't have the statistics for
Yeah.
how many people were stopped for that particular citations, but I will tell you that there's a lot more. There's been an increase in texting while driving as opposed to a decrease.
And we've had an increase in accidents that have been distractive driving, which usually relates to texting and driving, or some use of your cell phone while you're driving.
Now, the law against texting and driving, does that cover reading text
No,
or
this-
emails while you're driving?
It doesn't specifically address reading texts. What it specifically addresses is using both hands to text or sending a text message. That's what the statute deliberately speaks on. It does allow you to enter a phone number to dial a phone while driving. They have not prohibited the use of the telephone use to dial the number.
Because some states have they not? They've
That's
done away,
correct.
and you have to use a hands-free device if you're
New
going to
York
use
was
it.
the first state to enact a cell phone-free state.
I think a lot of the car manufacturers are going the route of putting that into the vehicle so that you don't have to use your cell phone. You can just talk in it. And
Yes,
it does everything.
right.
You know?
Yeah, I never understood why you can't text, but you can read.
That's a good question, but I'll tell you, there are other statutes that do prohibit distraction. For example, in New York they said, well, no cell phone use at all, where in New Hampshire they said, well, anything that distracts a driver is prohibited. And if you get into a crash, that's when it becomes a problem or a violation of law. For example, if you're reading a newspaper and you're driving along the road and you cause a crash, you have violated the law under this distraction law. Putting on lipstick, doing makeup of any sort, these types of things could distract the driver. They can cause a crash, and it's those times when they actually do cause a traffic collision, that's when they violate the law.
Can you cite them for stupidity? I mean, really. How many DUIs do you...
I don't have numbers for you, Cindy, because the designation of a DUI is a police matter. We don't, as EMTs, we're not allowed, and rightfully so, to decide whether this person is intoxicated or not, or it's some other medical condition. But I can tell you that a lot of vehicle accidents we go to are either distraction or under the influence of something, be it alcohol or drugs of some kind.
Do most DUI stops involve injury?
No, they don't involve, DWI arrests don't always involve an injury. However, the worst of them do. When we get called to any collision, officers have obviously a lot to evaluate in a very short amount of time. You know, first and foremost, protecting the scene, protecting parties at the scene. They must evaluate traffic flow and injured parties and information. One of those things is they check for is driver operation. They talk to witnesses and other parties involved in the collision, and in part of their investigation will determine whether the driver is impaired. And the law works in the sense that if they determine the driver is impaired to any degree, that's when they violate the DWI laws. They don't have to be a specific number with blood alcohol concentration. They don't have to fall down drunk, as some people may, believe it to be. But it's impairment to any degree.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's
Because when they say, you hear the slogan, buzz driving is drunk driving, and it is. Whether you are .08 or you're .09 or you're 1 point whatever, you're still over the legal limit, and thus you're impaired, And
What is the legal limit now?
Well, for anyone who is above 21 and older, the legal limit is .08. So that's prima facie evidence that you're under the influence. For anyone under 21, the legal limit is 0.02 blood alcohol concentration,
Good.
which is considerably lower.
Are the penalties for a 17-year-old different from a 21-year-old?
Yes, on a simple driving while intoxicated charge, they are different.
In our state, can you have an open container in the car?
No, not in New Hampshire. You cannot drive with an open container of alcohol.
All right. What if the driver doesn't, well, I would imagine it's the same thing. If the driver's not drinking and you can prove that he hasn't been drinking, but the girl in the car does have an open container, are both at fault, or?
No, the driver is responsible for any open containers in the vehicle.
Oh,
so if the
regardless.
passenger pops open a beer, it's the driver's at fault.
Okay. What about a first offense from a second offense? What's the penalty?
It gets fairly complicated when you talk about penalties because there's a lot of different circumstances, but for example, a first offense for someone under 21, the minimum fine is $500 with a penalty assessment that includes a 24%, so it's $620 fine. That's a minimum for first time offense for someone under 21. It also has a revocation of a driver's license for a minimum of 12 months.
First time drive.
This is a DWI first offense under 21. 12-month loss of license.
Wow.
They need treatment within 30 days, and they have to complete a program within 60 days. And the judge can also order an interlock ignition
Wonderful.
for somebody. That's not always the case. If you have a passenger who is under 16, it becomes an aggravated offense, and you have a 2-year loss of license.
Whoa.
So that's for any offender. So anyone who is under 21 or older than 21, if you have a passenger under 16 years old, the penalty is aggravated, the fines go up, your loss of license is 2 years.
Amazing.
And I think we have to remember, under 21, you're not supposed to
Right,
be drinking
exactly.
anyway. So it's
Yeah, so I would hope.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think most of our students realize that?
I don't think most students
No.
realize that.
That, I would think, would put a halt to a whole bunch.
It could, if they knew they were going to lose their license for 2 years, which are at 16 or 17, there are opportunities to drive to work and to college and to all these doors that are opening to them.
Yeah, the setback in life is hefty if you do this under 21.
I like that.
Sends a message.
It does send a message.
a message.
What about a second
A
offense?
second offense for anyone is a minimum $750 in penalty assessment. That's a $930 penalty. It also includes a revocation of a minimum of 3 years of a loss of license. And within 2 years, if you get a second offense within 2 years, you are ordered to the House of Correction not less than 60 consecutive days with no less than 30 days suspended. So for a second offense, within 2 years of the previous conviction, you go to jail for 30 days.
Wow.
And prior convictions beyond 2 years, but not more than 10 years, you will go to jail for not less than 17 days with no less than 12 days suspended. So it's a minimum of 5 days in the House of Correction.
Amazing.
So the state of New Hampshire takes the driving while intoxicated laws very seriously. The penalties are getting to be more hefty, and people are going to jail for driving while intoxicated.
Good.
Yep.
Excellent. And an aggravated offense?
An aggravated offense is an offense where there are aggravating circumstances. For example, if you're driving a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol and you cause a collision which causes an injury or a serious bodily injury or death, that can be considered an aggravated offense. Or if you leave the scene or you flee from police. under the influence. These are aggravated circumstances. There's a minimum fine of $750 in penalty assessment, bringing it to $930. The revocation is not less than 18 months. 6 months may be suspended under compliance with all sentencing. If you have a passenger under 16, the minimum revocation is 2 years. As I mentioned before, that becomes an aggravated situation. And there are treatment programs that you must complete within 30 days from release of the House of Correction, and you are committed to the House of Correction for not less than 17 days with no less than 12 days suspended. So you're serving a minimum 5-day jail sentence for an aggravated.
Good. Excellent. Any difference in penalties if you've got an infant in the car, or does it just go back to the 16?
It goes back to anyone under 16 in the car. It's an aggravated penalty.
Okay. Good. When a license is suspended, how do you know if I'm driving again?
That's a good question. There are a lot of drivers on the road today driving under the suspension or revocation. Drivers who drive under the influence typically violate other motor vehicle laws, and they get caught eventually. When a police officer makes contact with these drivers, they check the state's computer. It links with the Department of Motor Vehicles, and they give us their driver's license status almost instantly, and drivers in those cars have access to those computers, and they will know whether a driver is suspended and what they're suspended for. And if you're caught driving a vehicle under suspension, there are, of course, other penalties, including an arrest.
Good.
And don't offenders' licenses, the colors on their licenses change when they get them back also for DUIs or DWIs?
They do have a different license status because, again, the information on a DWI remains on their record for 10 years.
Good.
So beyond 10 years, that does change. But it does change the color and...
It's more identifying, if you
Sure.
will.
It does.
Any, let's see, if I'm going to buy liquor and I've had a suspension, is there any penalty for that?
There's no penalties for actually procuring alcohol if you're an adult who is legally able to buy alcohol. Some bail conditions, if you were recently arrested and under the court's jurisdiction, as in under bail conditions, they prohibit the use of alcohol or drugs during the time that they're going to court for their offense. Beyond that, for adults who are legally able to buy alcohol, there's no real penalty unless you're caught driving with alcohol in your system and you are under the influence.
Are most judges willing to suspend license or suspend time in prison or jail, or do they stick to the law?
The minimums will remain after the minimum sentencing or fines and loss of license. There is some negotiations that do go on depending on someone's circumstances and the circumstances of the offense. The judges have no discretion in those minimums. Those will stand.
Good.
Fines are collected. Loss of license is, stated, and the penalties are pretty large.
Great. What time of year is the most dangerous involving DUIs?
Well, I think from a personal experience, and Phil can talk about this too, because he knows probably better than I, but it's those times of years around parties, specific events. For example, New Year's Eve is a very highly advertised drinking while driving campaigns or slogans. However, the time between Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's is there's a lot of parties going on during
Yeah.
that time, which is not as highly campaigned or slogan.
Yeah.
Those are the times we see the most DWIs.
And you see a lot of days around holidays. So the day before New Year's, the day before Thanksgiving, because you see that a lot of people stay put on holidays for that reason, knowing that the police will be out there, knowing that they should. But the days leading up to or after, where they think that the police aren't out there watching, or that you know, that's when you see a lot. The day before Thanksgiving, the evening before Thanksgiving, is a huge day we see accidents at night, because college kids are home, and high school kids who have college friends are home, and they all want to hang out the day before Thanksgiving. They all want to party the day before Thanksgiving, and that leads to it. And then, of course, your Labor Days, your Memorial Days, your
4th of July.
Another big one we see, and this goes with motorcycle use also, but when the weather starts to change in the springtime, it brings people out. And that's when people start doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And we, at this time of year right now, see a lot of increase in motor vehicle accidents, either texting and driving, drinking and driving, distracted driving, because I don't know what it is. The weather brings people out of their homes. They've had enough of the winter, and they want to go out and have a good time outside, and they don't stop and think about what they're doing.
Do you have many arrests for motorcycle drivers under the influence?
Well, we can't break that down in our computer system for those things, but we do have a large number of motorcycle operators under the influence.
People could be very dumb.
I would say that motorcycle accidents that we go to, more than half of them are the motorcyclist's faults. Yeah, at fault for some reason. Be it because they're on a smaller vehicle, they can weave in and out of traffic, they can go much faster, whatever it may be. And then the other half of that is the motorcyclists can do everything in their power to be safe, and unfortunately there are other drivers out there. But and a lot of them don't wear helmets, because in New Hampshire you don't have to if you're over the age of 18, which I don't know what the law is for under the age of 18 not wearing a helmet, but you know, we see a lot of motorcycle accidents, no matter what the age is, not wearing a helmet.
Is there a penalty under 18 or 21 not wearing a helmet?
I believe the law does indicate that under 18 must wear a helmet.
Okay. What should parents be telling their kids? How should they be telling their kids, I guess?
Sure. Well, I think the most responsible thing for parents is face-to-face time, and I don't mean FaceTime on your
On a phone.
Skype,
or
phone.
Skype and things like this. I mean face-to-face. I mean actual contact with your kids. First of all, before they go out for the evening, they should have face-to-face time. You should have an opportunity to talk about curfew and enforce it. Most accidents happen, as you know, most DWI-related accidents happen late in the evening or early in the morning, sometimes between 1 and 3 a.m. So curfews are very important. Face-to-face time, discuss any chance you can as a parent, discuss during those opportunities about the penalties of DWI and the repercussions and how it affects other people.
I think that's the biggest thing, discussing the legal ramifications, but also the emotional and physical ramifications of drinking and driving. I mean, you may not hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt somebody else, and it may not be in a physical state. You may not hurt somebody in another car, but the emotional damage that you do to yourself and to your family that has to live with this is enormous. And on that chance that you do hurt somebody else or yourself, now it's somebody else's responsibility to take care of you, or somebody else's responsibility to take care of that other person. So the penalties, and it's not just you that it affects. It doesn't just affect you. It affects many people, your own family and people you've never met before, you know. And
Or your best friend.
or the people in the car with you. And I think that's, like Dawn said, that's something you need to speak to your kids about, because it's not just, you know, the child might, or the kid might think that, oh, all right, I might have to pay some fines, I might go to jail. It's not just you, though. It's a lot of other people that you affect.
Right. And I think one of those most important things to think as a parent is you need to be a parent and not a best friend or a friend. You don't need to be popular with your children's friends. You need to be a parent. And inviting your children's friends over is a good way to get to know them and their habits and their behaviors, and get a chance to talk with them about who's going to be driving that evening, you know, where you're going to be stopping off, where you're coming, you know.
I always told my daughter and my husband that if you go out and have some drinks and you call me for a ride home, I'll come. But call me from the police station, you're on your own.
Right.
I think ultimately just the kids need to realize that their parents may be strict right now, but when they get older and they look back, and they'll appreciate what their parents did for them, because now they're not in jail, or they're not without a job because they can't get there, or they haven't, you know, paid all this money out that they haven't earned yet and owe. I mean, you just set yourself back so much by doing this, and you'll appreciate what your parents did for you down the road.
Absolutely. And if I can add just one thing that I read, that the number one reason for teens refusing to drink alcohol is that they worry about what their parents will think of them. So if parents don't think that's important, their kids are listening. They just don't show it, but they are listening.
Good. Do you think our schools are doing enough?
I don't know if enough is a proper way to put it. I don't know if you can measure enough. I think the numbers are showing that, you know, we're increasingly becoming more and more effective, but it's a collaborative between the schools, parents, kids, and peer pressure, the police department, the fire department, and other public agencies. I think the collaborative should be doing more. However, our numbers are decreasing, so that's
Something.
I think these schools, if they focus on education, which is ultimately what they're supposed to do, I think with kids, physically showing them the ramification of what could happen goes a long way, you know, and I think that could be done more, you know, not in Londonderry, but across the board in schools, public education, news, media education, all of that. Instead of sheltering kids from the photos or whatnot, show them this is what physically can happen. This is what you may look like, or your car may look like. This is what you may do to somebody else. This is what the inside of a jail cell looks like. This is what people you spend time in prison look like.
Right.
These are, you know, they're not all DWI offenders, you know, and that I think would go a long way in educating kids.
And it's really not up to the schools. It goes back to parents.
It does.
It does. And
Guardians.
I think parents can't do it alone.
No.
I think they have the ultimate responsibility for their children's welfare, and being good role models, you know, when it comes to responsibility with driving, you know, not being distracted, you know, following the rules and taking it seriously, respecting the law, and reasonable drinking habits and different things, I think shows these kids that it's possible to have fun and enjoy your life without adding these miseries to it. I think they have the ultimate responsibility, but others...
It's a collaborative effort. It starts at the home, but I think that it involves what we're doing here, the police department, the fire department, the schools. It's a collaborative effort, you know, colleges, universities, because most college students aren't of legal drinking age until they're a senior in college.
Right.
So universities have a majority of kids that are underage also, and I think all of that together would go a long way.
I think you hit on something too. With kids going away to college, they have less parental contact. So it just goes to show you that you know, parents can be more effective.
Yeah, definitely.
And when these kids do go away, you know, to the schools, they get into a different kind of atmosphere and crowd. And peer pressure.
What are penalties for a parent holding a party and allowing liquor to all the kids? But I've taken the keys, so they're safe.
Well, the first obvious law that's broken is providing anyone alcohol who is under the age of 21 is against the law, so they can be arrested for that offense. Holding an alcohol facilitating an alcohol or drug party of underage persons is a charge in itself. That is a misdemeanor, and you could go to jail as a maximum penalty up to a year in jail.
Good, good. Could you go over the penalties again for first-time offender under 18? I'm amazed
Sure.
at how severe they are, which is a good thing.
It's no joke. It's not a joking matter when it comes to getting caught for drinking and driving.
Not at all. And the state has shown that in their penalties, and these have increased over the years, and they continue to be looked at very seriously. So for a DWI first offense under the age of 21, a driver who is found guilty of an offense can be fined a minimum of $620, complete an alcohol treatment program within 30 days, within 60 days, and a minimum loss of license for 12 months. For someone who is a DWI first offense with a passenger who is under 16, can lose their license up to 2 years, or a minimum of 2 years, excuse me. For a DWI second offense for anyone, it's a loss of license for 3 years. Penalty is a penalty of $930 fine, and you will serve, if within 2 years of the prior, you will serve 30 consecutive days in a house of correction. If it's beyond those 2 years and under 10 years, you will serve a minimum of 5 days in jail.
Good,
Minimum.
good. I like that.
And they do house people under 18 years old. They will take prisoners.
And you're not housed with other 18-year-olds, right?
Yeah, that wouldn't be fun.
I have not been there, so I can't say, but
What would you like to say to our audience before we close?
Well, I'd like to get back to texting just a moment. I think that texting is becoming more prevalent in not just teenagers, but adult drivers. But teenagers seem to be the focus of today's program and the focus of a lot of campaigns. I have personal experience with enforcing the laws in texting. I have seen them involved in collisions on the road due to texting. It's not a good thing to be texting on the road. There are penalties involved. It's a $100 fine for getting caught texting while driving, and that's if you're causing a collision, the penalties can be quite a bit more, including injuries, insurance, fines, and things like that.
What about at a red light?
That is the same as driving and texting. You cannot text while at a red light or any other time while you're in control of the motor vehicle.
Good. Because I'll hear, well, I'm not texting, but I was at a red light, so it was okay.
It does not matter if your car is in motion at the time.
Yeah.
Good.
Trust me.
Good. Phil, what can you...
I think that amongst all age demographics, teenagers are at the highest, or young adults between the ages of 15 and 20. They are at the highest risk of drinking and driving, driving without a seatbelt, texting and driving. And so I guess what I can say is that if in regards to seatbelts, if they're uncomfortable, the pavement's more uncomfortable. The windshield is much more uncomfortable, so wear your seatbelt. And the same can be said about drinking and texting. It may seem like a good idea, but when you're lying in a hospital bed, or you can't walk anymore, or you don't have an arm anymore, or you're blind, or you've killed someone else, it's not nearly as exciting as it was for the 10 minutes you were in your car. So just stop and think about what you're going to do before you do it, because at the time it may seem fun or cool, but everything that comes with it after the fact is not cool, and that includes death, and that's the reality of it, is that you could die or you could kill someone else.
True. Thank you both for being with me. This was very interesting, very informative, and hopefully it clicks to some people.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
that is it for today's show, and I thank Detective LeDuc and EMT firefighter Phil LeBlanc. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.